5.
Right, you already had me 8 minutes.
Oh, wait, Jordan's.
I make a motion. It's not time for that.
Starting at 6, right on the dot. 6. I think that's.
That was bad.
This is really right.
This was correct.
Okay, we gotta go. Welcome to the Oak Point City Council meeting of August 28th. This is a special meeting for our kids. The meeting is called to order at 6:01. And every council member is present except Council Member Weiler, who is not available tonight. We have a quorum. We'll start with the invocation. Our gracious Father, we always want to thank you for our beautiful little city of Oak Point. Thank you for your blessings and protection and favor over all of our citizens, our staff, and our consultants. Guide us to make the very best decisions for our residents. In God we still trust. Amen.
Amen.
And the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you.
You're getting it up. Couple more years, you'll have it.
We're on agenda item number 4. Jody, you don't need to read that entire long paragraph. That's the entire.
I would defer to Jeff.
I'm not complaining, I'm just asking.
I think we normally would. I think Jeff would normally suggest it.
Okay, y'all can take a little nap.
It would have been 5 agenda items, we pushed them all into 1.
Okay.
But I'll go up here.
Agenda item number 4, consider and act upon 5 resolutions providing for 1, this extraordinary optional redemption of certain outstanding City of Oak Point, Texas Special Assessment Revenue Bonds, Series 2018, Wildridge Public Improvement District Number 1, Improvement Area Number 1 Project. 2, the extraordinary optional redemption of certain outstanding City of Oak Point, Texas Special Assessment Revenue Bonds, Series 2018, Wildridge Public Improvement District Number 1, Improvement Area Number 2 Project. 3, the extraordinary optional redemption of certain outstanding City of Oak Point, Texas Special Assessment Revenue Bonds, Series 2019, Wildridge Public Improvement District Number 1, Improvement Area Number 3 Project. And 4, the extraordinary optional redemption of certain outstanding City of Oak Point, Texas Special Assessment Revenue Bonds, Series 2021, Wildridge Public Improvement District Number 1, Improvement Area Number 4 Project. And 5, the extraordinary optional redemption of certain outstanding City of Oak Point, Texas Special Assessment Revenue Bonds, Series 2022, Wildridge Public Improvement District Number 1, Improvement Area Number 5 Project, and resolving other matters incident and related to the redemption of such obligations.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. So the actions items here are all related to an extraordinary optional redemption of certain of the Wildridge bonds. In these cases, homeowners have prepaid their assessments, and as part of that, we're able to take out those bonds and allow us to pass on kind of those savings and to make sure that we have our bonds aligned with the actual amount of the assessments that are outstanding.
Okay.
So this happens once every year-ish.
So explain that one more time.
Yes, sir.
So why we take the money on the bonds or cash in the bonds?
They paid off.
Yeah, so certain the homeowners, by each property in each of the districts, or each of the phases of the district, has an assessment on the property.
Right.
Homeowner has the authority to come in and say, we're gonna pay off our assessment. Once we collect that and it goes over to Mary, once the assessment is collected from that prepayment, we take out some of the bonds to make sure that we stay consistent with the total par amount of bonds outstanding and the assessments that still remain outstanding.
Okay, match it, balances it.
It doesn't, yeah, this is trying to line it back out.
I don't recall doing this before. If we do, call it special something else.
Yeah, we did it last year. I believe it was last year. We did it three different times last year for same kind of extraordinary optional redemption. I think is the terminology we use.
So it's a normal housekeeping. type
It does,
item.
yeah. Yeah, it's a housekeeping item to make sure the bonds stay consistent with the amount assessments.
When someone makes a motion, can they move to approve as presented so they don't have to read those?
Yes.
Yes.
What makes it so true?
We have multiple call features on these bonds, and we sell the bonds. The purchasers know that. So we have an optional redemption, which will come using 10-ish years, where the city can refund all of the bonds and issue new bonds in their place at a lower interest rate, kind of like a refinancing. We also have mandatory sinking redemption that happens every year, where we actually get money and pay off the portion that is actually due there. And this extraordinary optional redemption is only in this limited case where we have prepayments and amounts that remain after prepayments. So it's just a distinction between it's the city's option to take this, but it happens in an extraordinary time. That's what.
Any other questions?
I was going, and I hate to lock things down here a little bit. This is more from Mary. Page, John, can you pull up page 35? PDF page 35. Annual collection cost of administrating the district.
John, yeah, go on.
One of those, they're all the same, more or less.
Mhm.
Can you zoom in on that a little bit? Which is not too useful. Mary, can you go through those line items one time, just so we know what's going on with where the money goes?
Sure.
Not one line per each.
So John, the top on the annual collection costs breakdown, is that,
Yeah,
okay. So your administration, that is your cost for our services. And then your city auditor, we have an estimate from the town for what the city auditor's costs are. Then all of these documents are required to be filed in real property records. So of course, the PIDs carry its own portion of those costs. County collection, so when the county collects, they charge a fee for the collection of those assessments. Your PID trustee is who is holding the funds during the year. They're also responsible for making all of these extraordinary option redemptions. They'll make all of the notifications. They'll actually redeem it. They also are responsible for paying your normal interest and principal payments throughout the year. Your dissemination agent, that's a new fee. In the past, we haven't had to worry about interest earnings on the debt service reserve or monies held in the reserve accounts, but you have sold your bonds at very, very favorable rates. And so you have interest earning components, and the IRS always wants to make sure that if you're earning more interest on your reserves than what you're paying on your debt, then there's a reconciliation. And so we know we are going to have those services, and that's something Hilltop also provides. But it's a separate division, and we'll have to work through that with them. So we're collecting those revenues now, so we're not in the hole, because we know that's coming up. Miscellaneous is just a budgeted number, John. It's a pro rata. And then past due invoices, from time to time, we'll have some invoices come in, whether they're auditor invoices or they're other type of invoices that we run out of funds. And so we have to catch up the next year because we don't pull from the city's general fund. Oh, and arbitrage is at the very bottom. I apologize. Dissemination agent is who I described as the arbitrage, but your dissemination agent is the agent that's responsible for sending out your annual issuer disclosure. In the past, when your developer had quarterly disclosures, they have to disseminate that. They post it on EMA, which is the electronic filing system for the MSRB. And then in our duties as your administrator, bond counsel, and FA, if there were any of the 16 items that were material events, we would have to file notice through your dissemination agent so that was, made known to the bond investors. But they all charge fees associated with their duties and responsibilities.
PID pays for all that.
Yes, sir. It pays for all of that.
One other question, that additional interest in the next block down, what was that? The 7850?
Oh, the second box?
Oh, the additional interest. So state statute allows for a 0.5% over the bond rate to be collected. And so that amount goes into your additional interest. So in the event, this is a great example, we had all these prepayments that we were holding on to, waiting for us to get to the SAP update season. While we're holding those, bond investors are still collecting the interest. But we can't go collect that interest from the homeowners. And we also have mandatory 30-day notifications, and we have to have council meetings. And so that interim period where the bond investors are still earning money, but we're not collecting it from the assessments, that's a bucket of money that we can go grab it from. So we're not having to go to the city going, hey, we're short on money, or the bond investors are going, hey, you didn't pay me, and we have to draw on the debt service reserve fund. That's one of your material event notices if we hit the debt service reserve. So this is an extra bucket of money there that if we have prepayments and we need to kind of balance that, we're able to access that. It's also for delinquency. So in the event we had a delinquency and we were pursuing foreclosure, but we were short on an annual installment, we could pull from that fund while we were working through the foreclosure component and not have to hit our debt service reserve account.
Time dependent slush fund, basically.
Yes, sir.
And that is all released when we get to the final payment of the bonds, we release all that.
Thanks for explaining that for me.
Absolutely.
Any other questions? If not, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve item 4 as presented.
Second.
I'll second. I'll take it, John.
We have a motion by Councilmember Horatio, and we have a second by Councilmember Lusk. Any further discussion? Any questions for Jordan? If not, we'll vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. The motion passes unanimously.
Only 12 minutes.
Agenda item number 5, consider and act upon an ordinance approving Wildwood PID Capital 2024 Annual Service Plan Update.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Mary Petty with P3 Works for your PID Administrator. We could not do your annual service and assessment plan update in the previous months as we have done the other ones because we were waiting for these redemptions to be done. So this service and assessment plan, unlike other years where we just said, hey, we're just updating the assessment roll, we actually resized those bonds to match what Bond Council and FA gave to us based on the redemptions that are housed inside these resolutions. So while all of the assessments remain the same from the standpoint of we didn't levy any new assessments, we did resize them. And so there were some saving components in there. And as we walk through the process, year over year, you'll see those continue to fall. But this service and assessment plan updating it for the annual tax roll. You'll be approving the assessment roll, and then it reflects all of the redemptions that were done in that item number 4.
Any questions for Mary? If not, is there a motion?
Make a motion to approve the Wild Ridge PID Capital 2024 Annual Service Plan Update.
A second?
I'll second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Bastish. We have a second by Deputy Mayor Pro Tem Kowicki. See, I got it.
You got it.
Last time. Any further discussion? If not, we'll vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. The motion passes unanimously. 6, consider and act upon an ordinance approving Prairie Oaks Phase 1 and MIA 2024 Annual Service Plan Update. Mary?
Yes, ma'am. Mayor and Council, this is your Prairie Oaks Service and Assessment Plan update that is separate and apart from the Phase 1, C, and 2 because this reimbursement obligation and these assessments were assigned by the developer to a third party, and those were used to secure bonds that you did not issue. So the advice of your bond counsel when we came to the next phase was that we would make sure we had separate assessment plans. So this one ties to the Prairie Oaks subdivision, but it's only that MIA and that Phase 1. We also, within that PID, had the developer negotiating with the school district, and the school district was not going to pay the assessments, and so they were having to work through the calculation to the exact date of closing, and that got delayed. So again, we weren't able to do this because we were waiting for them to complete their transaction. And so you will see us come back in the coming months because it was a significant amount. Actually, no, I take that back because those assessments get sent to the trustee and we didn't issue those bonds, so we won't be doing anything on that. So that's already been transferred. So we were having to wait, however, until that amount was finalized and we knew what those numbers were so we could adjust that assessment component.
Good question. If I read this correctly, you're saying you and our bond people are not involved here, but how would you make sure that their side of the planning gets done?
Great question. So previously, you had other council members, you also had other consultants. And those other consultants made a recommendation that the council authorize Wisconsin Public Finance to issue those bonds instead of the city. And so that's what occurred. And so it was done with separate bond counsel and other advisors. They're not your bonds, and so we don't interface and interact with the trustee on those. We basically collect the assessments just like a PAYGO PID, like the other part of this phase 1C and 2, and we transfer it to whoever's been assigned, and then we say, okay, we're done. Those bonds were also secured by assessments in another city. So they issued one series of bonds for 2 PIDs under 2 cities, and so your bond counsel, once they were informed and read into it, kind of said, this is not y'all's, so.
Are assignments of this type fairly rare?
Actually, a developer will assign it, and it does occur frequently, but the city has to consent for a third party to issue debt because it makes you an obligated person. And in this event, that consent was given way back when.
And I would say that the Attorney General has since provided rulings that would very much limit that this happens. So this used to happen more frequently than now. The AG has provided additional guidance that this is not what they want. They don't want Wisconsin issuers issuing Texas debt. So it has happened. This is a very rare situation where we have 2 PIDs in 2 different cities trying to sell debt for the same bond. So that's why I think it went out, because it didn't get approved by the Texas Attorney General's office, and they don't like that.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Make a motion to approve Prairie Oaks phase 1 and MIA 2024 annual service plan update.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Lusk and a second by Mayor Pro Tem Dufford. Any further discussion? If not, we'll vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. The motion passes unanimously. Let's see, that was 6. We're on 7. Consider and act upon an ordinance approving Prairie Oaks Phase 1C and Phase 2 2024 Annual Service Plan Update.
So Mayor and Council, as I mentioned, this is the remainder property on Prairie Oaks. We anticipate there potentially could be future development because this area does have some areas that have not had levies on them, but this is specifically phase 1C and 2. It is a PAYGO PID, which means that you collect the assessment, the developer applies for the reimbursement, and the city releases that once a year. So this is just a normal service and assessment plan update, again, delayed because we were waiting for the ISD transaction to complete.
Okay. Any questions for Mary?
I have a general question.
Yes, sir.
Maybe Mary not be able to address this. We have lots of PIDs, and everyone's a phase 1, a phase 1C, phase 1, part 2, whatever. Why do we have to separate them so finely? Why don't we just have a Prairie Oaks PID, period?
So great question. Let's put Prairie Oaks to the side because it's so.
I know some reasons, excuse me for interrupting.
Sure.
But there'll be some advantages to that, and there's disadvantages because of.
Sure.
Go ahead, explain.
So put Prairie Oaks aside because it's unique, but the developer comes in and they want the property assessed, and the council wants to assess that property. And if you're issuing bonds, you are certifying that the bond proceeds are going to be spent within 3 years of issuance. And so you need to put an assessment on a reasonable sized property that we know is going to be developed and sold and moving on down the line. The other reason is if you assess 1,000 units, the velocity of takedown on 1,000 units is much slower, and so it has more risk to it, and so that impacts your interest rate as well. Lastly, when you levy assessments on a phase 1, you're levying because you know homeowners are coming into place. But if you levy phase 6 at the same time, you're only levying 30 years. So phase 6 gets paid for 5, 6, 8 years by the developer when they're not even developing it yet. And so their reimbursement is not 30 years, it's really 24. And so you put those assessments in bite-sized portions for tax reasons, for assessment reasons, for development reasons, and even for some risk reasons. But that's why you have it. But normally what you see is like a Wild Ridge PID with multiple improvement areas.
Right.
It's very unusual to have Prairie Oaks Phase 1C2 and Prairie Oaks Phase 1 MI, but we inherited that, and so we stuck with the nomenclature and cleaned it up.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions for Mary? Not, is there a motion?
Make a motion. Motion to approve Prairie Oaks Phase 1C and Phase 2 2024 AM service plan update.
Is there a
I'll second.
second? We have a motion by Councilmember Lusk and a second by Councilmember Bastich. Any further discussion? If not, we'll vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. The motion passes unanimously. Agenda item number 8, consider and act upon a resolution to order a public hearing for September 25th, 2024 to consider an ordinance to levy assessments against assessed property within improvement area number 1 of the Chaparral Park Public Improvement District, which lies in the corporate limits of the city of Oak Point, directing that the preliminary service and assessment plan be made available for public inspection, authorizing and directing the publication and mailing of notices for said public hearing, directing that the proposed improvement area number 1 assessment roll be made available for public inspection and other matters related thereto.
Mayor and Council, if you recall, this development agreement was entered into some time ago for this development on behalf of Bloomfield developer. In the last several months, we called the public hearing to create the PID. We authorized the creation of the PID. This is the next step where we're calling the public hearing for the first levy of the assessments. Those assessments will be supported, will support bonds that are anticipated to be issued next month. And so the whole team, your financial advisor, your bond counsel, us, your underwriter, and even your city attorney have been working to review all those documents and make sure everything's in order. And so 2 weeks from now, that preliminary limited offering memorandum will go on the streets, having been reviewed by all of your consultants and your city staff. And then we will come before you on that September 25th date to levy the assessments that will be used to support that debt issuance. So just wanted you to know those next steps coming. You're not voting on those bonds tonight, but you are following the statutory requirement to call a public hearing for the levy of assessments. So those action items are separate. You have to levy and then you authorize those bonds.
Could you clarify the term levy assessments in this scenario?
Sure. So the levy is the action by you via ordinance that places the lien on the property for the amount that's within the service and assessment plan assessment roll. So this is the resolution to call the public hearing to meet the statutory requirements, and attached to this is your preliminary service and assessment plan. That preliminary service and assessment plan outlines the costs for the public improvements that will be financed by these assessments, the areas, remember we looked at those areas before, and then the number of lots the developer's anticipating. There's already moving dirt, and they're so far in that they've got their preliminary plats already reviewed, so we're pretty firm on all of those numbers. But when we get to a pricing, this preliminary service and assessment plan would be updated to reflect any interest rate changes, and that would really be the only change.
So then what this is doing is saying that whenever we do actual levy and assessment, it's going to be based on all of those items.
All of those items and all of this preliminary service and assessment plan documents, Jody, if you want to scroll through there, it should be attached. All of that is required by, well, the assessment roll is required by statute to be provided. And so it's available for inspection. It'll get published in the newspaper. The landowner will get a mail notice, even though it's the developer. And that way everybody knows that that levy's coming and it's there. But that way that information is out there and available for inspection. And then when we have the public hearing, people aren't hearing it for the first time. They've actually got the documents and all the information in order to speak intelligently about it. Yes, sir.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution order public hearing for September 25th, etc. as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Horatio, and we have a second by Deputy Mayor Pro Tem Kowicki. Is there any further discussion? Questions?
Not yet.
Okay.
Page 292, Johnny.
Oh, not yet. I thought you said you didn't have questions yet. Sorry.
292. Yes. Comes out over $17 million in bond. I'm checking my math on this. So 17 million, how much they plan to spend on this, right?
Okay, so on the far right-hand column, that total column at the top, those are your sources. So your bonds, we're anticipating that par amount of bonds will be 11.876.
Right.
And then you have some oversizing that's being constructed by the developer. You have some contributions by the developer that are major improvements that are not part of the financing, and then so they're paying cash for those. You've got non-assessed property, your commercial property is not in the PID, yet while they're completing water lines, they're having to stub out. And so the developer has to pay for those in cash because they're not eligible to be reimbursed from the PID. And then you have private improvements, fine lot grading, lot moisturizing, things specific to the lots. That's not public improvements. And so all of those costs are separate and apart and called out. So yes, they're going to be spending approximately that much, but if you drop down to the bottom, where you see the uses, your hard costs are approximately 14.5 million. And then you have debt service reserve, capitalized interest for 1 year, and then your underwriter's discounts and your cost of issuance of the bonds. And then your administration account needs to be pre-funded because we won't collect assessments until the next go round. So that's where you get your 17.188 number.
Okay, so going back up to the 14 and a half,
Yes, sir?
that's basically how much they're gonna spend. I was just trying to do the math, we take 44 acres, 14 million divided by 44 acres, and that comes out to be about 300,000 per acre. Which per house would be about 50,000, does that sound right? Per every house, and that's $50,000.
So development costs vary significantly from parcel to parcel, i.e. from development to development. But that is generally a range of dollars that we see, but we have also seen them as high as $80,000, $90,000 depending on how far they're having to pull utilities.
I thought it was higher than I thought it'd be. So much for that. Okay.
Infrastructure costs have really gone up, haven't they?
No.
That's why the developers need PIDs.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions or comments? If not, we'll vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. The motion passes unanimously. Is there any further business? If not, the meeting's adjourned at 6:28.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Director.
Was it as short as I hoped?
Thank you.
You do
All right, we
have
said
good
we
questions.
could go.
Well, no, they're great.